So when you take an executive and say, hey, all of the threats to anyone exist for you. Um, you could be attacked with virtual kidnapping, that is a simulation of your children. You could be attacked with a traditional sort of financial fraud as a simulation of your banker. And you tend to have, and this is true not just of executives, but high net worth individuals in general, tend to have more folks in their circle of trust who can make high impact financial change.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with Joshua McKenty. With
Good
this,
morning.
good morning. So, in this episode, we are diving into one of the most urgent and fast evolving threats in the cybersecurity landscape, more specifically deepfakes and AI powered fraud. And our guest is Joshua McKenty, former chief cloud architect at NASA, co-founder of OpenStack, and now CEO of Polyguard, the industry's first proactive defense platform against synthetic fraud. And because deepfake attacks now occur every 5 minutes and even more frequently, and they are not just targeting the general public, they are going straight for the C-suite, and from spoofed fund transfer requests to full-scale impersonalizations of executive teams, the threat landscape is changing fast. So, and the consequences can be catastrophic. So, Joshua, welcome to our Risk Management Show podcast today.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
Absolutely. So, I believe that we will have a very thoughtful conversation on this topic of deepfakes and AI threats targeting executives and other practical, maybe you can offer some practical impact tips to stay safe. But before that, Joshua, could you tell us a short story about yourself, your career path, and what brought you to where you are right now, and maybe sometime what you guys at Polyguard are up to these days?
Yeah, absolutely. I started writing software as a child, and so I was writing software before networking existed, before the internet existed, which meant I built websites early on in the early days of the internet before there was even SSL certificates, and that gave me sort of a vantage point as technology evolved. I just was sort of naturally involved in it. And I worked most of my early career in open source, partly because the community felt meaningful to me. And then over time, because open source became a place where most of the important cybersecurity work happened. So the transition to Polyguard came naturally out of that experience. I saw Max Headroom as a child, and I was sort of terrified of it. I was too young to know that it wasn't real, but old enough to realize it could be real. And so, for those of you who didn't see this weird movie in the 80s, Max Headroom was the first deepfake. It was the first idea of video content of a person that was not actually a recording of the person. In the 80s, that was just a weird idea. By the end of the 90s, we had done that for the first time in Jurassic Park, where we face swapped the actor onto the body doubles, the stunt people. And then into the 2000s, this became a thing that we did regularly as CGI, but we didn't start calling it deepfakes until 2017. So my worry about this started when I was young, and then when I was at NASA, I was considering it pretty seriously. I started blogging about it after I left the agency while I was working on OpenStack. And it's just been in the back of my mind for a long time of like, sooner or later, this is the existential threat to enjoying a digital life. We can't trust any part of our remote life, any part of our digital life, unless we understand how to tell the difference between fake and real. Otherwise, the synthetic era overwhelms us. So I really felt like it was inevitable I would end up working on this problem sooner or later. It was the first problem I was ever really scared of personally. And the era we live in now is the natural outcome of computing plus networking plus cloud, plus AI, plus social, ergo this.
Mhm. All right. So you kind of introduced this deepfake analysis through 80s, 90s, and 2000s. That maybe let's go deeper and discuss what are the top deepfake and AI-driven threats currently targeting executives, and why are high-trust leaders like legal and finance people have especially vulnerable for this.
Yeah. The weird thing about deepfakes is when we say you're being targeted by one, that actually means one of two different things. It either means people are trying to convince you of an impersonation of someone else, or they're cloning you and using it to attack your circle of trust. And in that second case, the reason executives are so vulnerable is because both attacks are very effective. You know, in the sense of if you take, let's say, a random software engineer, of which I have been one, at a large organization, you might clone someone and get them to do something. You might say, "Oh, well, we convinced you that it's the bank calling, and so you have been defrauded." But cloning them doesn't really put a lot of other people at risk because they're not well known, right? They're not the person the finance department is going to trust instructions from. They're not in charge of the corporate bank accounts, and they don't have a large social following around sort of product misinformation or competitive misinformation. So when you take an executive and say, "Hey, all of the threats to anyone exist for you," um, you could be attacked with virtual kidnapping. That is a simulation of your children. You could be attacked with a traditional sort of financial fraud as a simulation of your banker. And you tend to have, and this is true not just of executives, but high net worth individuals in general, tend to have more folks in their circle of trust who can make high impact financial change, right? Whereas, a software engineer has maybe a spouse, a partner, maybe they have a broker, maybe they have a wealth manager, but unlikely. They might have one or two people in their life who could access their bank account. An executive might have 20. They'll have counsel, they'll have personal assistants or administrative assistants, they'll have property managers, they might have business partners who have shared access to those credentials and a full finance team. And so the number of people who could be simulated or who could be attacked by a simulation of that executive, that circle of trust is just much bigger. And it includes a lot of folks that the executives don't think of. And so the shift in the target, it used to be, I mean, we've had deepfakes again for a while, right? And we had shallow fakes before that, and we've had pre-generated content. But if we look at the evolution of the technology, the early tech was slow, it was hard, it was expensive. In order to get a good looking face swap, you were talking a lot of computing time and a big, talented team. And then as the technology has evolved, it's not only gotten more accurate, it's gotten easier to use, it's gotten cheaper, it's gotten faster so that it can be deployed in real time. And most importantly, there's very little source material that's required. So I know even just a year ago when we were talking about this, in order to make a good video deepfake, you needed 30 minutes of video of the target. You needed a lot of material of them speaking publicly on social media or scraped up. Now you need one photo. You can make
Mm.
a very, very passable deepfake with one photo and 5 seconds of audio. So the
Oh.
amount of source material you need of an executive has come down so much that literally everyone can be targeted.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I heard that I'm based in the Netherlands, and we had some, they call it CEO fraud, and it was kind of very famous, notorious case. One large CEO from a large company, he got some instructions or whatever email, so have to click from his CFO that requires to some transfer of funds. So he clicked, and but this was without video, just as if it's email from a specific employee. So yeah, now it's coming even deeper,
Yes,
kind of.
absolutely.
So perhaps can you share with us some case studies, specific case study, and how it kind of unpack a specific case study? You said you have some Hong Kong case study for us. What made the deepfake attack so effective, and what can an organization learn from it?
Yeah, this is probably the most famous one. It's a Roop. So it's a multinational company with a Hong Kong office and a mid-level finance executive in the Hong Kong office. So not C-suite, but someone with access to those bank accounts, was convinced to transfer $25 million US, the equivalent in Hong Kong funds, over a series of wire transfers. And what's instructive about this attack in particular is one, that it's not unusual, right? That the firm is not unusually vulnerable, that the person targeted is not unusually stupid. Um, and and second, that the attack was multi-channel. And so this was a mix of email, text messaging, and video. And they were eventually convinced by joining a Zoom call with a number of other participants, all of whom they believed to be other members of the finance group, including their CFO, but everyone else in the call was a fake.
Oh,
And so there are several instructive things in here. First off, we still think of cybersecurity as if it's a channel specific solution. We have tools for business email compromise, we have tools for smishing, we have tools for vishing. That approach is terrible at this moment because the attackers are not thinking of, oh, I'm going to attack this company with email, or I'm in the business of making email attacks. No, they have a corpus of data now, and they're attacking using the data, and they'll use whatever channel is appropriate, and they'll shift between channels. So we see these multi-channel attacks now that go from a text message that's not trying to get you to click a link, it's trying to get you to call a phone number. And the phone number is the second part of the attack. And then they have a deep faked voice that answers that phone number that convinces you, oh, here you go, that you're in this next step. So that's one. Multi-channel is big. The second thing that we get wrong, we believe that we would never fall for the scam. Whatever the scam is, we look at the story and we're like, that would never be us. Because we would never be, because some part of the story feels stupid. You know, there's a famous New York Times article about a New York Times reporter who was scammed out of $50,000. And the end of the story is her outside her house with a shoebox full of cash, handing it through the window into a car to a total stranger. And we say we would never do that because that's clearly stupid. And what we're missing is that everyone has an amygdala. Everyone has a portion of their brain that is wired for fight or flight. And when you activate the amygdala, when you get someone into a panic response, rationality goes away. They just do that, and we're all wired that way. We have different paths into the amygdala, right? For some of us as parents, it's a threat to our child, a threat to our spouse. It can be preservation. So there's a bunch of what there. India has this rash of fake trials. So they're deep faked trials where people are called on a video channel saying, "Hey, you've been accused of this crime. Stay on the line. We're going to have your trial right now. We've got the judge on, and if you leave, we're going to try you in absentia. So you got to stay on." They're found guilty, and then they're allowed to pay a fine. And otherwise, the cops are going to come and take them away to prison, right? Which we laugh and sounds ridiculous. But if you got a call from someone saying, hey, it's the cops and we've accused you of this crime and we're going to try you right now, if they get your amygdala activated, you go along with the whole story. The same thing in virtual kidnapping, right? As soon as they have the sound of your child on the phone, you hear your child's voice and they say, well, I'm going to kill your child. Rationality is gone. You're not going to behave rationally. So this second fact is like we can't hear these stories and go, "Oh, that's someone else. That's not us. We would never do that." Yes, you would. And so that leads to this third thing that we take away from Arup, I think, which is we trust in training. A big part of cybersecurity and risk management is training. We know that these things will happen and we're going to do these things. So we're prepared and we believe in preparation. And that's important. The problem is twofold. One, we're not training the right people, right? So when we think about a target of executives or a target of the C-suite, our training is SOPs. Our training is standard operating procedures. And so we say, hey, when we're doing an M&A transaction, we need to keep everything confidential. And so our standard operating procedure is we'll use these tools and we'll discuss it in this way and whatever. That's great. We need NSOP. We need non-standard operating procedures that we train the rest of the building for. Say, hey, if you're a mid-level finance person, we would never call you about a secret M&A transaction. That's not going to happen. And so when it does happen, you should know it's a fake. And
Hmm.
we're not training proactively around these non-standard events, which is why interns get hired and they think the first thing they should do is go buy Amazon gift cards because the CEO texted them saying that's what they should do. Because we haven't trained them to say, we would never ask you to buy gift cards. And now I know everyone laughs at the gift card thing, but it is literally every time I do a call with the C-suite, they're like, oh yeah, gift card fraud. 100% of the time, every quarter, we have some intern who falls for that. And it's embarrassing for them. It doesn't really cost us a lot of money, but it's like, it's endemic. Um, so this idea of a non-standard operating procedure or a circle of trust, we're saying, wait, who actually has the keys to the kingdom in our company? It's more people than you think. And you're not training everyone there. The last problem with training is our cadence on training is off, right? We train as often as we have time, which means really it's an annual burden or it's maybe a quarterly burden if we're really, really disciplined. But the reality of deepfakes is they're changing every day. So a year ago, I was out there saying, hey, great, you should really train on deepfakes. And what you should know is get people to put their hand in front of their face like this. That doesn't work anymore. As of like a couple months ago, sorry, we've all switched to these avatar-based deepfakes now. So that, yeah, that test doesn't work. Don't do that. The lighting thing isn't going to help you. The mirror thing still works. I'm not sure how long the mirror thing is going to work for. So now I'm nervous about saying train people to hold up mirrors to the side of their face
Hmm.
because that works today. Maybe it's only good for 6 months.
No.
Um, so our training cadence is off now in this very rapidly changing world. We're saying, oh yeah, and code words, we all tried that. I did that with my kids when they were going to school. Nobody can remember the code word when it matters. And so you're like, oh, well, we'll use the code word every time. I was like, great. So now you've accidentally told 100 people the code word, and now the code word's meaningless. It's out on the dark web.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Actually, we had our previous interview on this podcast. We had someone from legal industry, and he described a situation when a real estate deal was kind of bad guys were listening to his computer, not his, but some of his clients' computers. And when the deal got through and there was not notary deed, they changed in PDF. They changed the what is it? The account number, and
Yes.
people transferred the money to the account number, and they couldn't get the money back. So this
Yeah.
is
Yeah. I
wow.
mean, that's the transfer attacks, the escrow agent attack or the mortgage attack. There are a bunch of vulnerabilities in there. The vulnerability landscape is changing all the time. And deepfakes end up being this tool that attackers use to take advantage of those vulnerabilities. But we have to actually be aware of all the vulnerabilities. So one of them is information leakage. And we would imagine in our mind, we think a lot of things are private that they're not. Right. So we're like, oh, I order something from Amazon. That should just be between me and Amazon and maybe the shipper. But it's not because the relationship between Amazon and the drop shipper and the drop shipper and the customs broker and the customs broker and the messaging service that's sending you an email about it, those all have leaks. And so what happens is the attackers have found a stream of data in one of those leaks. And for whatever reason, sometimes when you order, maybe not Amazon, maybe it's Temu, maybe it's Sheen, um, the attackers know that you've ordered something. They don't necessarily know what it is. They don't necessarily even know your address, but they know enough that they know that now is the perfect time to be sending you a text with customs brokerage fraud or package address fraud or one of these small hooks of like, oh, maybe I'm wrong and this is fraudulent, but I really want this package because it's a birthday gift for my daughter. So I'm going to gamble and pay the extra $70 or whatever. And I think it's just a $70 vulnerability, but it actually exposes me to these much larger attacks. The other thing that's happened is mortgage fraud, honestly, is still a great one in that when the attack is wire transfer, when the actual consummation of the transaction is over a wire, a Swift transfer, those are easier to recover. You have a little bit of buffer time, right? If you call your bank an hour later, you're like, hey, I think I just got defrauded. I sent $7 million to the wrong people. They can often recover a good chunk of that. They're like, Swift has a bunch of buffers in place. Maybe the money is not all the way gone and we can claw it back. But like a Zelle or any of these modern payment rails, you're done.
Hmm.
That money is gone. It is gone really fast and you're not getting it back. So a lot of these other attacks are getting pernicious in a sense that the partners involved in helping you fight fraud are less and less effective. So we have to prevent fraud more and more carefully.
Hmm. So, what are the most critical habits that executives and teams need to change to defend themselves?
Yeah. I mean, okay, so the number one habit is hard. It's basically like rewire your brain. Stop trusting things. And that's impossible, right? So then what you have to say is, okay, I have to acknowledge this risk and we have to be proactive about it. And acknowledging first that it's not stupidity, acknowledging second that training isn't going to fix it, both because the training isn't going to keep up and also because people can't be hyper vigilant. We've seen this with however many decades we've been fighting business email compromise. You can train people every quarter not to click on links, but you need them to click on links the rest of the time. Banks
Exactly.
will email you saying, we'll never call you. And then they'll call you the next day to ask if you got the email. Like literally, my bank calls me every time immediately after they sent me an email saying we would never call you, and then they call me. So we train people and then we break the training, which is worse than not training them at all. What we can do and what we have to start doing is the same thing we did with SSL, right? This is the benefit of being very old is I just remember the internet before SSL. I remember running e-commerce before we had HTTPS and collecting credit card numbers on the internet in insecure plain text ways. And how magical it was when SSL was built and people had to understand it. And e-commerce companies were like, oh, so what I do is I have a website and I tell everyone that that is my website. And I get a domain name that really makes sense. And I have a public key that is signed for that website. And so then when everyone goes to a website that's claiming to be me, there's a way for them to check. We did this like put the VeriSign badge on your website thing, which was weird and janky, but it made sense. We have to do the same thing for people. We have to start saying, hey, I have a LinkedIn profile, which is the thing that everyone goes to know that it's me. And on the LinkedIn profile, I need to say in my bio, hey, I'm Josh McKenty. I podcast or I blog or I have video content, and it will always be signed by C2PA, or I'm using an authenticated camera and here's my public key, right? We can do this now with things like TruePic and C2PA. The LinkedIn platform supports C2PA video content. So we can start saying, as a person, I publish online and my authorized content looks like this. Because the moment where I could just not publish and keep my face secret is kind of gone. The fact that I
Mhm.
can make a deep fake from a photo now and have it be convincing and have it be accurate means trying to keep my persona secret doesn't make a lot of sense. What makes sense instead is to say, here's where my authorized content will live, and here's how you can be sure that it's me. And I'd like the world to doubt any content that's not signed by me. This is the me that you can trust. We need to do the same thing with phone numbers, right? It's become really depressing that I need to call my bank because they've called me, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to hang up on you and call you back because I don't know
Mhm.
if it's you unless I called the number. But then I Google my bank's name, and Google gives me the phone number of an attacker because search has collapsed, right? So we need every business we do business with over the phone to have their phone number on their website. And that sounds so trivial. It's like, why wouldn't that be true? It was true for a long time. It just stopped being true because
Mm.
everyone defunded their support lines and they're like, we don't want to answer phones from customers because that's extra work. Well, suck it up. If you want to be able to trust a call from a customer or a call with a customer, they have to have an easy, specifically reliable way to get your phone number. So that's proactive. And this mental model that we should be verifying identity continuously, that it's not a, oh, I know you well enough. I see so many people say to me, I know them well enough, I would never fall for it. I'm like, come on. I'm going to activate your amygdala in like 15 seconds. I'm going to convince you that something catastrophic is happening and your ability to be rational, it's sort of done. Like, so if you think you're going to screen me in the first 15 seconds of a phone call, I challenge you to tell me the last time you did that in the last week. When your mom called, did you ask her a verification question? When your brother called. So my co-founder and I had this conversation about his family. He's got a sister, he's got his mother, he's got his dad. And they had asked him, they're like, which one of us do you think is the most vulnerable to deepfakes? And he was like, honestly, every single one of you. Like, none of you, if an attacker called pretending to be me and claiming to be kidnapped, 100% of you would do whatever they said. And that's true for all of us. That's definitely true for me as well. If someone called pretending to be my children, I'm toast. So the behavior you have to bake into your soul is when an attacker calls in a non-verified way, immediately hang up. Right? This is the thing where you set your phone to direct phone calls from unknown calls to voicemail. You can listen to the voicemail and call them back. It doesn't make you unreachable. It means they can't hijack your amygdala in real time.
Mhm.
You need to not answer your phone. And then when it is a number that you know and trust, ideally you're using Polyguard so that you're not answering plain phone calls anyway. So at least you know the identity of the person calling you. Because caller ID spoofing is so easy. It's been so easy for decades and it's never going to get better. The design of the phone system is broken. Caller ID spoofing is built into the design of the phone system. Um, the last thing is like it is a pretty easy thing to verify when someone reaches out to you in a new channel. You know, if you and I have never had a conversation on WhatsApp and I get a WhatsApp message from Boris, I should probably text Boris or call Boris and be like, "Hey, is this you calling me on WhatsApp?" Like just new channel establishment is this moment where we become really vulnerable, right? Um, it feels like extra work. It's just extra work we need to get in the habit of doing.
Yeah, yeah. I'm getting all the spoofing numbers. Then I'm going to probably I'm my telephone number because I'm on the website. My telephone number on the website. It's somewhere in the internet. So a few times per day, even not even per week, I get in the call that oh you call me? I don't know I never call them, but it's repeating all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. This is CEOs in general are the most cloned. It's because our phone numbers are the most public and because the moment when a new employee joins our company is when the employee is the most vulnerable because they are now wired to trust us. We're in the circle of trust, but they don't know us at all yet. And that makes them the most vulnerable as a new hire to that the classic text messaging scam saying, "Hey, I want you to buy gift cards." Or whatever it is. I mean, the gift card scam is just so ubiquitous. It feels like now it's the new version of the Nigerian prince scam, right? And yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Joshua. It was very, very, very interesting and useful tips you gave us. So maybe I would like to ask you a personal point of view. What are the major misconceptions in this field of deepfakes that you kind of strongly disagree with?
Oh, I mean, the biggest one is people think that detection will save them, right? They hear about this fighting AI with AI, and it's not going to work. I'm sorry, you can. It's like waiting for Godot. You're going to wait forever for detection to catch up. And here's why. There's three reasons why. The first one is simple to understand. A new detector is really hard to build, right? You got a really smart team of really good engineers spending a year analyzing a new kind of deep fake and figuring out some vulnerability and how it's generated and what it looks like and a way to detect it. Great. It took you a year. The attackers can now take your detector and bypass it in 2 days. And now you're going to start over and spend another year for a thing that buys you 2 days of safety. Um, and that's because the way that deepfakes are made includes what's called generative adversarial network scans. And a detector can be added to again to make a new kind of deepfake, right? So every time we're making new detectors, we are teaching the attackers how to avoid those detectors. Like that's just how this works. So um, and we saw this in email fraud, right? Before we invented SPF and DKIM, there's these key protocols now in emails that really cut down on spam. And we say, hey, when I get an email that looks like it's from Boris, I can be pretty sure it actually is from Boris because the domain name has this pattern that says these are the servers that send email from this domain name, and Boris used this email, this server to send this email, so you know that it's from Boris from this domain name. And we built on that. Before that, we had this like Bayesian scoring system, aka detection for scam and emails. And we're saying, oh, well, you use certain words in a certain order, and maybe it's a scam, and maybe it's an email you really need. And so we're going to sort of mark it possibly spam. And then you're going to miss some emails that you really need into your spam folders. And then you're going to look in your spam folder all the time. And some of those you're going to get convinced by. This spam detection thing didn't really work until we added these identity authenticity pieces to it. So where detection does help is in, misinformation and misinformation, political misinformation in particular on social media platforms is a big problem. Um, and as an executive, if I'm worried about my face being put out onto Facebook to sell, dentures for, in the case of Tom Hanks, right? Somebody cloned Tom Hanks' face and was using it to sell dentures, and he's like, "That's not me. I'm not the spokesperson for a dentures brand." Um, like detection's good for that. It gives some scoring. It also gives him some legitimacy to say, "Hey, that really isn't me. Look at these deepfake scores." But it's not going to protect you from an attack against you personally, a sophisticated attack targeting you or targeting your loved ones with an impersonation of you. That's not the tooling that's going to save you. So that's the first one. The second one that just irks me, media keep telling people the wrong thing. They're like, here's how you can spot deepfakes. Oh, I really am upset that anyone ever said that. Because even if it was true for the week that that article ran, it is immediately false afterwards and people read it forever. What goes on the internet lives there forever. So every one of those pieces of content now, if you Google how do I spot deepfakes, Google and the AI will tell you a bunch of things that are not true that make you more and more vulnerable. And that's upsetting to me.
All right, fantastic. So, Joshua, those were all my questions. Perhaps if I forgot to ask you something that you think is important to our audience, please go ahead.
I mean, I think the last piece is just how we think about risk, right? In this broader context of cybersecurity risk and um, I guess this is an organizational construct, right? I worked in risk management before I was involved with deepfakes. I ran the global earthquake models software program. So we
Mhm.
were building earthquake models, which is risk modeling, risk management. And so the constructs of like preparing for an earthquake and preparing for a deepfake are very similar. And they tend to have the same mistake in it, which is it gets put into a weird silo. People are like, oh, who's running the deepfake defense team? It's like that's not how you want this organized. This is a cross-cutting concern, right? The risk is not deepfake. The risk is fraud and impersonation and theft and identity theft and all and like every bad thing that can happen in the cyberspace. So deepfake is a technique in but the deepfake is also a form of AI powered attack. So if we think of this as the broad stream of, hey, you're going to get attacked in every channel of communication, those attacks are going to be informed by data collected from data breaches in the dark web, and they are going to be synthetic phone number, synthetic email address, synthetic voice, synthetic video. Don't organize yourself around whether or not it's a deepfake. Organize yourself around whether or not you're vulnerable, which you are. And then whether it's a shallow fake or a deep fake or just a really clever amygdala hacking approach, that you at least you've got the team organized in the right way.
Mhm. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I think we can do it for another few hours. I heard that. A few days ago, there was a kind of mass riots in the Middle East because of some deep fakes on a specific leader or something like this. It can go to the wars well, in a few years or maybe a few months with this.
Yeah, I got an email last night from some colleagues in a conflict zone saying, please, send help. What do we do about the deepfake misinfo problem in conflict zones? And sadly, the broadcast deepfake problem is just a completely separate category, right? It's not, which is why we talk about like threats to executives. That's not the world they live in, and there are specific tangible things you can do as an executive, much more so than fighting disinformation. Um, Disinfo, I mean, it's sadly a policy problem. We thankfully are starting to see policy instruments. So the Take It Down Act is making its way through the legal process. It looks like that will get signed. So that at least makes it a crime to threaten to make deepfake non-consensual intimate imagery. So the NCAI category is getting dealt with first. I'm hopeful that if that bill passes and we now have a federal, in the US at least, a federal legal definition of a digital forgery, aka deepfake, and that the threat of using one is the same as using one in terms of impact, that we will then be able to apply that to political misinformation, especially when it happens in wartime or in a conflict zone, and end up with the same takedown requirements.
All right, fantastic, Joshua, and thank you. And I wish you great success to you and your
Thank you.
company, Polyguard, and hope we can cooperate in the future.
Thank you so much, Boris. Really enjoyed it. Take
Thanks
care
a
of
lot.
yourself.
Bye bye.